I think they need to literally start being delusionally confident with how talented they actually are. Like, I
think that this team is at the point now where they need to make drastic changes.
So it's kind of like a perfect storm of everything in one. And if they don't win, it's really their fault.
Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the Reverse Sweep presented by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/reverse sweep and use code reverse sweep for a first deposit match of up to $100. Today, we are joined by my usual co-host, Patrick X Price, and his ex-teammate and co-host on this very show. It's Call of Duty legend Doug Censor. Martin, welcome back to the show, Doug. And how's retirement treating you?
Pleasure being back on the show, having a lot of fun. Always love being around competitive Call of Duty, whether I'm a player or not a player anymore. So being retired is weird. I'm breaking a pull-up world record as we speak, and that's weird. So life right now feels upside down and strange, but I'm just going with the flow.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it, mate. I'm looking forward to breaking your pull-up record once you break it.
Yes. 10 more weeks, I'll break it, and then we'll train you over the next year and a half, and you'll break mine.
Sounds good, mate. Sounds good. Today's show, we're going to be doing it a little differently. We're going to be focusing more so on like a tier list to start you guys off. So we're going to go into that pretty sharply. Starting off here, we've got the Miami Heretics. What's your guys' thoughts overall on them recently? Personally, I think that they've had a bit of a fall off.
Yeah, Mark, you know my thoughts. I think if Chris was here, he would have the exact same opinion. These guys suck. The roster change that they made, I don't believe did anything for them. Obviously don't have anything against Eric Boom, but I don't think he solved this team's problems. And I really didn't think he was gonna solve this team's problems. Like, obviously Journey was not playing well, so they were just like, okay, we just got to get a guy who's getting kills. Well, Eric's had some series where he's got some kills and some series where he's got absolutely shit on. But I think this is just a Miami Heretics like fundamental issue. I don't think they're playing correctly. And I think other teams are just honestly having an easy time when they match up with them. So I'm putting them in blow it up right away. And the reason is, they lost to the Thieves, just yesterday. And Thieves are already in the worst team in the league category. So the fact that Thieves are able to beat them, Miami's worst case scenario.
I mean, if it was me, I would definitely put him in the blow it up, but I would just look at it like you had Vickle run a sub and now he runs an AR and he's had some really good strides. You have Metals who has had some really good strides. You have Lucky who puts up a lot of kills, but I'm looking at it like I just think it's empty stats, if I'm being honest. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I would love to see them try to maybe bring Juan back in, and I know they got Real, but I mean, look, you brought Journey off, you bring in Eric Boom, and then you bring Journey back in, and then Eric Boom's on the bench, and Eric Boom's back in, and it's like, I don't know. I just look at Lucky, and I just think he's getting a lot of like cleanup kills for his guys because they're running around and everything. But I would just like to see that change too, because when you say blow it up, they've already made a one-person change 2 different times. I would just swap out Lucky for Real now at this point. And then at that point, if this doesn't work, then like we've tried a sub change, we tried an AR change, we tried role changes. At this point, what else do we do? We've lost 6 games in a row. It's not going to get much worse than where it's at. But it's good to see them trying new things, right? Like, it is still early in the season and they still have opportunities and they still look good in games. But I agree, blow it up. I mean, it can't really get much worse than where it's at right now.
Do you see any world where they bring Journey back and keep Eric?
They should try it. Like I said, because like I just look at the way that they're moving around the map, and it looks like Lucky's just playing on a different pace, and that's why his stats look really good at times, because he's really slow and he's making sure he gets his kills. But like, they're all flying around, man, and like everyone's got to be flying or play structured. Like, it just seems like there's too much inconsistency with everyone moving around at different paces.
Yeah, I think for me, Real right now is like the final sort of option they have, really, because then after that they're drowned out of the Spanish-speaking talent pool, and then they need to go down the route of looking at, building English-speaking teams, etc. It's a whole other situation for them. But yeah, I would agree with you guys. Put them in the blow-up category for now.
The only problem though is if they got rid of Lucky, and Doug, I know you're probably not up to speed on our prize picks, and we'll get into it later, but Lucky Less has been our go-to on prize picks, and it's never let us down. We go with Lucky Less almost every time it's available, and that would be a dagger to us, because that would take one of our locked projections away.
I mean, I'm not trying to like single him out here, but man, like when I watch their team play, he's just never getting involved with the action. I don't know how you're going to win in the league when like you got 3 dudes flying around and 1 dude not getting involved in the action. It's just, for me, like, yeah, blow it up, bring Jose in, see if it works. Maybe put Lucky on the sub and try one of them on the AR. Like maybe I'm just going crazy here, but
that's insane.
I just don't see reality where like, again, like when I look at COD League over these last 5 years, I just look at there's 3 to 5 really good teams of COD teams, and then there's just 6 to 7 teams of just players playing for a salary. They're just straight up playing for a salary, just playing to get kills, playing to do nothing to be beneficial, because it's so easy to deceive the human eye when it comes to Call of Duty. And I think players just don't have confidence in themselves and they just play for their own stats. And I'm not saying that's what Lucky's doing here. I just think it's naturally happening for him. I'm not saying he's doing that at all, but I'm just looking at their pacing of their team when we look at Heretics, and they absolutely have pacing issues, and it's really hard to watch, honestly.
I think finally to end it off on Miami, I think they have had some good peaks though this season. They have had periods of play where they've looked really good during set periods, and then they just fall off a cliff and they look horrible. But I think we're all in agreement here, right? Blow it up and that's it locked in.
Yeah,
definitely.
All right, sweet. Moving on to New York now. Well, to be honest, they're a weird team because for a certain period of time, they looked a bit shaky, but they were still collecting wins. They've came in this week, went 2-0, and I think that obviously the last one against FaZe was very impressive, especially with the way Sib played throughout the series. I think that they're definitely a team that's going to be sliding into the top 4 for me, but interested to know your guys' thoughts.
For me, I actually don't think this New York team has ever fallen off. I think they just had a really bad Boston, right? Like when we look at it, this team before that event was 5-2 or 6-1. They only lost to the Ultra. This team has always been good. They just had a very bad event. Now they're starting off stage 2 4-0. For me, I just think this team has always been godlike. There are reigning world champions. I think they made an upgrade in the off season. And they're having another great online, qualifier, just like they did in the first one. So this one may be a little bit different. They got a game win against FaZe, which was big. They won 2 S&Ds, and even in the hard points, like they were out rotating FaZe. They were just getting broken. Like that, it was just one of those. FaZe just played insane and was breaking every hill. I'm still very high on this New York team. I've always had them in my top 4. And now they're on an upward trajectory, right? They might even shake up. Before we had, it was like Ultra 1 and FaZe 2. And now I think, New York is kind of solidifying not only being in the top 4, but where they're at in that top 4. I think they have a few more good matchups this qualifier online. And so I'm gonna lock them in the top 4. I actually think New York is gonna have a pretty impressive stage 2. I'm predicting that they maybe lose 1 and otherwise win out. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see the rest of these games. I mean, they're just looking phenomenal in S&D, and we've talked about this. Like S&D matters a lot because a lot of these games have gone game 5 so far in this game in general, just mono for 3. So yeah, I'm locking them in at top 4. I'm curious what you guys think.
I'm with you on the top 4 just because did Atlanta FaZe ever lose an online league match up until today?
No, they were 9-0, and then in their total wins, they were 9-0, and then they lost to Ultra, and now they lost to FaZe, and Ultra was at the event. So yeah, they were flawless in the first part.
Yeah, if you're gonna beat Atlanta FaZe in anything, especially these online league matches where they just seem statistically to be absolutely dominant in, you're definitely a top 4 team. You don't just beat these guys by accident. They don't just wake up and play bad on a league match. They're always playing consistently good, FaZe. And with New York, yeah, they've had a couple of inconsistent moments, but ultimately they always came out with the wins in the first stage. And I agree with Pat. First major of the year, you get dead last. It sucks. Like there's no excuses for it. It sucks. Like you got dead last, but they did bounce back. I think they're 3-0 now in their matches.
4-0.
And 4-0 in their matches now. So it's really hard if they have 2 bad events in a row and they're looking like this, I would say they're probably middle of the pack, but it's pretty much you're a top 4 team in my eyes. If you're beating Atlanta FaZe, you have to be in the top 4.
Especially the way Sib played today against FaZe. He didn't play well at all, and they still managed to grind out a W because he's their guy that they brought in to be that sort of main Slayer type, and he dropped a 0.78. And regardless, they still came out with the victory. So it's definitely impressive if you take that stat line into account.
And they're dominant in S&D. Like, they 6-0'd in the game 2, and then even in game 5, they got up to like a 5-2 lead. I think it was a pretty large lead. And so if they're being that dominant in S&D, I think this team is easily going to put respawns together. Look at this roster. Even going back to last year, like they dominated respawns. I think the one downside is like I don't know if Hydra has fully found his footing in this pace of game in Hardpoint, and it may just be the maps. Right, the maps are way more open. It's not necessarily like subs can take over, and so I think this team's going to put it together in Hardpoint, and to be that dominant S&D early on usually carries for the rest of the season, right? You don't really have a fall off in Surge. So yeah, I mean, I just think this team's on a massive upward trajectory, and I think that they could make this Major 2 pretty interesting.
Yeah, 100%. So lock them in at top 4, and then we'll move on to the Carolina Royal Ravens. For me, I think that they're a team that are still going to be that gatekeeper team to the top 8 throughout the season. In my opinion, I think they're going to like make playoffs. I do think that they're going to be a team that is consistently getting almost skill gapped by the top teams. I think that they have a great bunch of talent in there, especially Gwyn being that young player. He consistently is playing really well. But I think it's going to be difficult when they're going up against those higher level teams, the likes of Toronto and FaZe, like we've spoke about multiple times on this show. I think that that's going to be the issue for them. So that's why I'd probably stick them in the middle of the pack area.
I would put them on alert. I like where they're going. And I know that they just made some changes. Like they got GodRX out and they're making some changes to bring TJ in. Real is obviously not on the roster anymore. So they're actively making changes to get better, and they are also improving, but they're either middle of the pack or on alert. And because they just made those changes and they're still early on in these changes and it looks pretty decent, sometimes not good, sometimes decent, I can't really say where they're at yet. I don't know if they're going to need to make more changes or keep the same roster. So for me, Pat, I'm curious what you would say, but I would want to put them in on alert.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the middle. Like, the problem that I see with this Carolina team is they're still so inconsistent, right? Like, if we take how they played at Boston right after, or let's go before, right? They make the roster change. Like, they push some teams to the game 5, but Fellow was like the worst one on the team. Then they go to Boston. Fellow played great. I mean, they all played great. Fellow played way better than he was playing online, and they upset some teams. And then they come back, and it was kind of the same thing. And then now they're in a situation where that Fellow's playing good. Like, the only consistent one for me on this team has been Gwyn. He's the only one that's had it, since the get-go. And honestly, it's been kind of like a get Gwyn some help kind of story early on. And I just, I don't know if I have faith in Clay and TJ to consistently play well all year long. And same with Fellow. He's been inconsistent. So it's like, I think the problem for me to put this team in the middle of the pack is like, with their current roster, the middle of the pack is their almost guaranteed ceiling, right? So I would want to say we put them on alert because I still think this team could improve. I don't think they're good enough to justify just being like, oh, we're going to assume we're middle of the pack the rest of the year. Like, I think they should be on alert because if they lose some games where, they're losing to teams below them, whether it be Vegas or ROKKR or Boston, which I do think all three of them are better, then it's like you might as well upgrade. So for me, I'm going to put these guys on alert because I still think there's more changes to be had. And I think, Doug, the thing for me is, what is this team good at? Like, when you look at the game, like, do they have one shining game mode where they're great at that? I just don't think they do. I just think they're okay across the board and maybe can upset some teams, but I don't think that should be enough.
That's why I think on alert makes sense, because I look at Clay and Feller in history and they've had success teaming with each other. They haven't gotten a win, but they've gotten good results on LAN. And obviously this last event, they got a decent result. So Gwyn does look really good. I know Feller and Clay do work, and TJ's a good piece. So could they cause upsets? Yes. Could they win? I don't know. Could they get top 4? I believe they could. I just don't know how high, how low the ceiling is. And I do think that there's a chance there'll be another roster change. So I think putting them in on alert, treading cautiously, because they could still improve and get really good and make it to the middle of the pack top 4 and move up. And they could be a middle of the pack team as we stand right now. But Yeah, I just think it's a little bit early, and there's a few other teams that have done a little bit more, and that's why I want to put them in this category of on alert.
Yeah, I have to agree with you guys. I think middle of the pack was maybe a bit of a stretch. They definitely could make some improvements there, and their ceiling is fairly low as a team, so I think that is something to take into account. So yeah, I think on alert's fair. They definitely could make improvements. They definitely could squeeze into the top 4, like Doug said. I think that's
I will
fair.
say we should keep them high though, like high on
Yeah.
alert. You know what I mean? Like they're not close to blow it up, right? They're just like they're in prove it territory, I think. So I think they're still pretty high on this on alert category.
Yeah, 100%. And now moving on to LAG. They only played one match this week, which was obviously with the new schedule and whatnot. That happened previously, but ideally we were playing more matches, but that's another topic. They played they lost 3-1 to OpTic. Yes, that's what it was. DiamondCon played great in the first match from what I remember. I think he went 32-19 or something along those lines. And then after that, it was just, he cooled down massively. He heated early. And then they obviously lost to OpTic. And I don't really know what to think about LAG currently, to be honest. What do you guys think?
They also lost to Vegas last week, 3-1.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
So I don't know, man. These guys at the start of the year, like they were a potential dark horse. They had some of those results where you're like, hold on a second, like, can they do something? And even in their OpTic series, like I thought Assault played really well, and he was kind of the one who was like, you know, maybe we need Assault to step up for this squad. DiamondCon's kind of been that consistent factor all year long, and we're like, okay, well, Assault's been pretty inconsistent. Maybe he'll step it up. Well, he did, and they still didn't look too hot. I know they came out hot map 1, but it fell off very quickly, and I don't know. I don't know what to think of this squad in general. Like, the problem for me is like, what do they, even if they were blow it up, hypothetically, right? Let's just say, who do they even change, right? Like, they're all pretty inconsistent. The only person I would say is a lock on this team is DiamondCon. A one-person change, I don't think is going to change anything for this squad. I feel like it would be one of those things where you would have to make a multiple-person move. Yeah, I guess. Does that mean I'm on the blow it up side, I guess? Because I'm saying, like, I don't think a one-person change is going to do it. And I really don't think they're good enough as is to jump to the middle of the pack. So it's like, this is kind of like an in-between on alert and blow it up for me, because I just don't see any moves that can fix this squad. What do you think, Doug?
They got to be on alert right now because they kind of show that they have potential, like you said, to be a dark horse. And I'm starting to lose a little bit of confidence in them just because I haven't seen much of a, like, for example, in New York, okay, they got dead last at the major, but we saw them win champs. Okay, so you kind of take it for what it is. It's like you won champs, you got dead last. But with the LAG guys, I can't sit here and say I have utmost confidence in them doing X and Y and Z and winning these series because of what they've done prior to this. Like, a lot of these players have had some success in challengers, but they are on alert in my head. And if I'm a player on this team, I'd be on alert, and I would be thinking in my head, if I don't play well right now, I'm getting dropped, because we could go back to the middle of the pack and be mediocre, but we all know that our ceiling isn't winning, and somebody's probably going to be on a roster change sometime soon. So I wouldn't want that to happen. I would do everything I could to make sure I play the best I can. So I would definitely, if I'm LAG, be looking to make roster changes after this X major if they're not going to get a better result. So for me, they're on alert.
Also, though, with a team like this, they're supposed to be good at search, right? Like, you look at this roster and you're like, this should be a solid search team. Like, that's where their strength should be. And early on, I thought it was. Like, they had some high-rise S&Ds early on this season where it was like DiamondCon was just taking over maps, and they were looking like a good S&D team, and that's what I would expect them to be. But now they're just like, we'll just maybe take a respawn, but they're not really winning anything else. So
I think teams are starting to figure out their map pool as well, to be honest. Like you said, they were good at high rise at the start. Teams started vetoing it. They started losing more S&Ds and series and things like that. So I think that it's one of those ones where teams at the start of the season may have underestimated them somewhat. And now coming in, I believe that they're sort of obviously well more prepared for what LAG have to offer on the other maps. And I think that they're in that on alert area, like you guys are saying. Because I think they did have a good period of time. They did have a decent stage one. Going into stage one, I think a lot of people predict the LAG bottom 4. So after that stage, you've got to say that they sort of exceeded expectations coming into the year.
I guess. I don't know, man. Okay, I guess my second question was, do you think they're better than the Ravens currently? Like, would you, if you were picking two teams you'd have more faith in, is it LAG or the Ravens?
I'm having more faith in LAG personally. Just slightly. But just because I think they have a few maps that they're really strong on. Whereas, like we said, Carolina kind of don't have really any main strengths.
But can we say that about a lot of these teams right now? I feel like with a lot of these teams, they're like, ROKKR is kind of falling off, and we're going to go to ROKKR soon, but they're kind of like slowly going down to that list as well. Like, to me, it just seems like there's a few really good teams in our game right now, and then there's a lot of teams trying to figure it out. Like, if you say who I have more faith in, to me, it's a toss-up. You could flip a coin, and I wouldn't be surprised who's going to win.
If you had to pick.
It's literally a flip a coin. If you say Carolina versus LA, flip a coin, I'm seriously flipping a coin. I wouldn't even know.
Hold on, let me ask you this. If these two teams match up tomorrow, who do you have winning?
If they're matching up tomorrow, I might have to go with Mark on this, to be honest, because I just have more faith in their teamwork, and I like the Carolina roster on paper, and I like its potential better. But tomorrow, I would pick LAG just because I feel like they've had more time together. I know the types of people that they are. They're really big on teamwork and working hard. And I think those little things would beat this Carolina team right now.
Okay, so let's put LAG ahead of Ravens then in our on alert category. Does that make sense? And Doug, I'm glad you answered the little projection question I gave you, because we're going to hop into our prize picks from last week. We obviously did not do too well. I did mention, though, Lucky Less hit again. We love Lucky Less. It's always our favorite projection. But I think the problem was we wanted a superstar performance out of Kismet and even Pred. I mean, we thought, let's be honest, Pred is the best player in the lobby when it's OpTic Texas against the ROKKR. And he played the worst. He had, I think, the worst performance that I've seen him have in a long time. So that one obviously, it was a really quick first three maps, and he was less by quite a few kills. And then for Kismet, it was kind of the opposite story. The week prior, we projected Hydra to have a superstar series, and he didn't, but Kismet did. Well, this week, Kismet kind of took a back seat, and Hydra had that superstar series. So, unfortunately, he also went less. I think what we're doing, Mark, is we're giving too much faith to some of these players. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. I think so. I think that, to be honest, the way the series have shaped up have kind of not been as expected either. Because when we're doing these projections, it's more so us like looking at the matchup and thinking this is going to be a close one. Then Minnesota come in and absolutely dismantle OpTic the first two maps, and it kind of throws everything out the window. So, yeah, I mean, it's been difficult for us obviously this season, but I think that, this week is going to be the one. It's going to be the one.
Alrighty. Well, the matchups we have for this week is going to be the Minnesota ROKKR against the Atlanta FaZe and the Seattle Surge against the Toronto Ultra. So what do we think? What are we feeling confident with player-wise in those?
I'm looking at Minnesota and I'm thinking, I mean, he's been playing really well. So I don't know if this is a good shout, but it's always a good one, I think. Lamar Less.
Yeah. Oh, Less. Less.
Yeah.
Lamar Less. Oh, man.
I think he's playing well, though.
He's been playing well, but he's going to have an off series.
Lamar Moore, baby. Look, Lamar Moore. I can't say this enough. Me and Lamar have had private beef and public beef, and I constantly always vouch for this dude because it just seems every time he plays with a team, he puts his team together, they always end up doing well. He fixes things that other people don't fix, it seems. And I have to constantly give this guy his praise for it because he's always been a thorn in my side as a player too, Pat, even though we all like to sit here and clown on Lamar. He gets it done. He just figures out a way to get it done. So I'm taking Lamar Moore.
All right, hear me out.
I'm going to ride it out.
You both have very opposite opinions. So I say we stay far away from this Lamar projection.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about an awakening Less? He's been playing really bad. He has like one map a series that he does good right now. That's what I've seen out of him. I think personally he's the worst player on this ROKKR squad. Going up against the Atlanta FaZe, like I could see him just getting getting smoked. The one thing that makes me, kind of scary about picking Lamar is like he is playing FaZe, and it's like where he should do bad, I feel like he's going to try the hardest against them. So that's why I just kind of want to stay away from Lamar. But Awakening, I think that's like a player that FaZe can just like bully off the map almost. What do you guys think?
Nah, I like that logic on Lamar. He does seem to have those big series when you expect him to at least have a big series. And I think coming out of those bad losses the last week, I think that they're definitely in a situation where going up against FaZe, backs against the wall, you might just get a legacy series out of Lamar. It could happen. So, yeah, I'm with it, staying away from him there.
I'm with it too, just because like Awakening is one of the best slayers I've seen in CDL. But yeah, I agree, Pat. There's something going on with this team dynamic or his game or something. I don't know. He had a really good evasion control today where he was just popping some crazy pieces. But for the most part, I feel like the Awakening less is actually an underrated one to pick.
What about on the flip side for FaZe? Since we only got 2 matches this week, I think we could go for 4 picks maybe.
You sure about that?
Sure? I mean, we only got 2 matches, Mark. So I mean, the thing is, like, Simp has been playing insane this whole year, and we haven't had a projection where we took Simp more yet. And I think, Mark, we're almost missing the boat. Simp has been a beast, and I kind of this ROKKR squad, like, I just don't see anyone on this ROKKR team gunning Simp. Basically, that's what I wanted to say. I think Simp's just going to be the best player in this lobby.
I'm with it. It is a bit faded of us that we've not took him the entire season, to be honest. So I'm with it.
Yeah. What do you think, Doug? Simp more? Is this ROKKR squad?
We can't go wrong. I mean, Chris, I don't know. Chris to me has just been so consistently excellent to the point where we almost forget about him in a way. Like we don't even care to talk about him anymore because of how good he is. Like there's zero controversy with Chris. He's always just in his lane, doing his job, playing well. And we always expect it from him to the point where like, it's very rare you even see him play bad, honestly. So yeah, I'm with it too.
Alrighty. Up next, this one should be easy for us. The Seattle Surge against the Toronto Ultra. I think this is going to be the fastest series of all time. And I don't think it matters who we take less, because I think both of them will be right. Because I think this is going to be just an absolute Toronto Ultra blowout.
Yeah, I think so too. Alec less.
Wait, what happened?
I just said Alec less.
Alec or aBeZy, dude? I thought aBeZy was going to be pretty solid coming in, but he's had 2 now really rough series. Like today, it was like neg 20 something. Like he had a really rough one. And again, we're talking about this team just getting world starred. Like
Pat, they have, to me, like, I'm not trying to be a mean person here, but I know all these players so well, and they're all really good. But together, they're really bad.
Their team is terrible.
They're really bad to get. Look, there's nothing personal to say about any of these guys. These are really good players. This team is really bad. There's nothing about it that makes sense. Like, Hugh is way too aggressive. There's no one else to follow him up. aBeZy likes to play slow and ratty, and he's not, like, following up lanes. aBeZy's running a sub half the time, and then you got Alec just being himself. I don't know. To me, it's just like it's a really tough situation if you're those guys right now.
Yeah, no,
so
I have to agree.
If you had to pick the person on the Seattle that we're going to take less, you want aBeZy or you want Alec?
I'm taking aBeZy just because I feel like he's the new guy on the team and he doesn't really know his position on this team, and there's not really a position for any of them to kind of like build off of each other in a way. And as the new guy on the team, it's probably frustrating. So I don't want to harp on the new guy, but I feel like the aBeZy less makes sense.
I think it makes sense, but like you guys said, he's had a couple bad series. Maybe he comes in hot next week. That's the logic I'm going to throw at the wall. Maybe, potentially.
It's possible, but it's like
against Ultra though, Mark.
Yeah,
I think they're going to get 100-point club.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I'm down to go with aBeZy as well.
On the flip side, Insight, he's the slowest player on the Ultra, and if we think it's going to be a pretty quick series, like, I think he's the safe one if we're taking a less. Yeah.
If we're assuming it's going to be an absolute blowout 3-0 demolition, then yeah. And then it's going to be a 3-2 grueler. Like close. For sure.
Well, we're only projecting first 3 maps, Mark. So I mean,
that's true.
If it goes the distance, we're all good.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, true.
So to recap, we're gonna take Simp more. We're gonna take Awakening less. We're gonna take aBeZy less, and we're gonna take Insight less. Does that sound right?
Sounds good.
Yeah, that
Cool.
sounds good. Yeah.
All righty. Well, remember, PrizePicks has quick withdrawals, easy gameplays, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, and that's what makes PrizePicks the #1 fantasy sports app. Go to PrizePicks.com/reverse sweep and use code reverse sweep for a first deposit match up to $100.
And now getting back into our our tier list. We're starting off with FaZe here as the 5th team. What is there to say about FaZe? I feel like this week they didn't have a great one. They come in, lose against New York in a very sort of tough fashion. Maps 1 and 3, they looked unbelievable, but they lose map 2. New York come in, grind out to a map 4 victory, and then take game 5. Unfortunately, it's FaZe who are the ones who lose that one, and you've got New York going through with the win. FaZe for me are still going to always be in that top 4, potentially, winning the event category. I think it's hard to move them out of there. What's your guys' thoughts? Do you guys put them in the top tier or the second tier?
I'm gonna put them in top 4, and the reason I say that is because I really want that gonna win the major to be one team, right? So I'm gonna put them top 4 because I actually don't think they're gonna win this Miami event. I think they have obviously all the talent in the world, but this team cannot be bad at S&D. And I yes, they have all the gunny and respawn ability in the world, but their S&D has been falling off. And honestly, I'm kind of waiting to see like we talked about Simp, right? Like he's been just a superstar in this game all year long. But everyone else has kind of been, good, but floating on that great. And like when I saw they picked up Drazah, I expected this roster to have like 0 flaws, right? Like they have 4 now great players who are ultra consistent. Drazah was amazing for 100 Thieves. Cell has been Cell his whole career. He's like the best player in the CDL history right now. But for me, it's like aBeZy is still having moments, and I think it's not just aBeZy. I think it's impacting players like Hydra, players like Shotzzy, where the maps aren't really made for these sub takeover styles, these very fast-paced, aggressive subs. And I think that's impacting him. And it's not to say he hasn't been an amazing player. It's just he's just had up and down performances. And again, in their S&D is like they're getting a lot of first bloods, but they're not converting those to round wins. And this is something they've been great at in the past, but they're not at the moment. So until they show me that their S&D is getting there, especially when we talk about like in a grand final, you're playing 3 searches. I just can't see them winning this event. So I'm going to go with the top of top 4. What do you guys think?
Yeah, putting them top of top 4. They just got second. They lost to Ultra. They lost a close series. But the thing about FaZe, Pat, we've been talking about these guys for years, and the conversation has always been the same. I want to ask you and Mark the same question here, and I don't know if anyone out home is thinking the same thing. Why is this FaZe team so disgusting, but they come up short? How does that happen? Like, I'm sure these FaZe guys are thinking that too. How are they always – it's like every event, they're in the finals. They're in the finals. They're frying everyone. They're in the finals. And then they just always run out of gas. Why? Like, so I can't put them in winning the major, Pat. I think top or top 4 is the right thing that they deserve because they're always at the top. They usually do get an event win at least once a year, but I just don't understand how they always get that close. And then I feel like that's your moment, right? That's when you really just dominate teams and players, and they've dominated everyone throughout CDL history. So I can't put them in winning the major. It's
weird because to answer your question, like, it's not like these guys can't win, right? Most of them have won 2 world championships.
I mean, 100%. They're definitely undisputed the best.
I think to me, it's something about they're just being a better team getting to the finals than they are in the finals, right? Like, and I think we've talked about it in the past, Doug. I don't think this team is cocky enough, honestly. Like, I think they're aware of how good they are on a talent perspective, but I don't think they're cocky enough to where they walk into the venue and they're like, we're the best team here and we're winning this event. I think they walk into the venue now and it's more like, we know we're better than 99% of these teams and we'll make it to the final, every time. And I think they have the wrong mindset. I think they need a mindset shift. I think they need to literally start being delusionally confident with how talented they actually are. This team should be walking into every venue, every event, thinking they cannot lose. It is impossible for this roster to lose.
Doesn't it feel like they're just scared to screw it up, Pat? Like they don't want to lose their consistency. Like they're afraid of losing consistency. And maybe that's why the finals don't seem to always go their way. Like that's the only things I'm thinking, like deep psychological thoughts.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think they have the right mindset getting to the finals, but in the finals, they don't think there's no way they're losing. And I don't, again, I think it's just one of those things where they just need a mindset shit. They need someone to look them dead in the eye repeatedly and just tell them you four are the best fucking 4 players in the world. No one can fuck with you. And I think that's honestly what's helped Toronto, right? We talk about when Scrappy came on board for this team. Scrappy believes that there is no one in the world better than him at Call of Duty. He genuinely believes that. And that mindset is it's that bleeds into your teammates, right? When you're playing with someone who feels that way, even if let's take Jamie, even if you take or in Envoy, you take someone that's super passive and just mellow and isn't that vocal about cocky and confident. If you have someone like Scrap just having that energy on your team, it bleeds into you, no matter what type of personality you have. And it automatically kind of feeds that I'll call it that voice in your head, right? Where it's you start believing it. And I think FaZe need that. I thought they were going to get it with Drazah coming into this team because I thought he had some of that on the Thieves. But I think Drazah might have not taken a back seat, but almost been intimidated in a sense where Drazah felt he was joining the 3 best players, not Drazah thought he was adding the final piece to the Atlanta FaZe squad. So for me, I think they just need a mindset shift. They just need to be they need to realize who they are, honestly. And I think that would really help this team in these grand finals.
And that's why. Sorry, go ahead, Mark. I was just going to say that's why I think it just makes sense to put him in the top 4. But go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, no, I was going to say as well. I think there's so many factors into Atlanta FaZe's perceived lack of success in finals particularly. I think that they're a team that go through a real lack of adversity throughout a lot of matches. They're just kind of steamrolling a lot of games a lot of the time, and then when it comes down to those crunch moments when the pressure's on them, as you guys have said, they're always expected to win. It's a different level of pressure for them, and for whatever reason they succumb to that, or they have succumbed to that a few times. Like you guys said, though, they're still winners, multiple-time world champions, and still can win every single event they go to. But I think it's fair to put them in the top 4. At the top of it, though.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, at the top.
I will say, though, we were talking about New York's kind of trajectory for this major. They obviously just beat FaZe. They beat them in 2 S&Ds. But I wouldn't be surprised coming to this event the next few weeks, obviously with these qualifiers, if New York is looking better than FaZe heading into the major. I don't think they are just yet. I know they just beat them, and it was obviously a close series, and New York's currently 4-0, and FaZe is 1-1. But I wouldn't be surprised if we were, in a few more weeks higher on New York than we are on FaZe.
Yeah, true. And New York do have a good next couple of weeks of matches as well, so you could see them, propelling themselves to a 6-0. So yeah, then they're in the conversation for winning the event at that point. So yeah, for sure, I think that top 4 is a good space for both of those 2 teams. And now we're moving on to the Minnesota ROKKR, who have came off a very weird week because they lost both games 3-2. In the OpTic series in particular, they looked great at points. They were world starring them, and then for whatever reason, something just they just lost composure. At the end of that map 3 in particular and map 4, there was just little moments there that I feel just little individual errors just cost them. In a 13v3? They just need to not drop 4 dead, and they're going to win that map. And they're going to win 3-0. And they just all fly forward and drop dead. It's unbelievable. That was unlosable for them. So, yeah, weird.
Yeah, I'm looking at that same thing too, Mark. When I think it was Vivid who just chowed out Ticket. I'm just sitting there thinking bro, if I'm Lamar from Dark, I know Lamar is saying, I have your cross, stay down. And then he just sees them all die and he's shooting the cross. Like that would give me major trust issues if I'm a player on this team. If that's what I'm experiencing in the moment. Because Pat, I'm just going to talk from my heart. Like I have to bring up past experiences. I never was the best player. I just showed up in big moments because I had people like Pat every single day screaming at me, holding me to this standard that wasn't real, but he forced it to be real onto me because I just didn't want to let the guy down. And if I was able to go through all those trials and hardships and then get to those good points, now it gets to this point where as a player, Pat, thank you for the ego you gave me. It's like, if I get let down by teammates in that way, man, I'm just telling you straight up, like I'm not doing it. Like I can't deal with it. Like I need players that are going to bring me up and give me more trust and confidence. So like these unlosable situations can't happen. And I feel like that's going to put, like Minnesota ROKKR obviously had a good result. They've had some really cool series, but for me, like I'd have to put them in the middle of the pack. And like, I would just have massive trust issues if I was on the team, because it's like, why are we losing these games? And how do we explain this? And there's no answer to it. So for me, like, I think they have to be in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, they're now 0-3, and they've had just 3 absolute series where like, what the hell? Obviously the OpTic one was by far the worst, but even the Boston one, going game 5 and losing that one. Obviously they lost to Ultra game 5, which, I think that one was a little bit more of an impressive game 5, but yeah, then to come out and get reverse swept in that horrible OpTic series, and then obviously go game 5 with Boston. I want to say they're middle of the pack, and I think they deserve that spot. But the thing I want to call out here is I think they're middle of the pack, but they're also kind of on alert for me, because I still think this roster could use a roster change. I think they're like one roster change away from being in that, like, can we put these guys in that top 4 convo, right? Like, I fear that if they stick with the exact roster they have now, they'll stay middle of the pack all year long. And it's one of those things where it's like they're not on alert because they're falling down. They're on alert because they can't go higher. So for me, I kind of think that, I think Lamar has earned his spot. If you would have asked me in the beginning of the season, I would have said Lamar. But I think Lamar has proved that he's been better than Awakening all year so far. And Vivid, man, Vivid is making a strong case for Rookie of the Year. Like him and Gwyn are my 1 and 2.
You mean Linz?
Or sorry, yeah, Linz, not Vivid. Linz is making a case for Rookie of the Year for me, and Vivid's been solid. So yeah, I think if they were to drop Awakening, and it's not drop Awakening because he sucks, it's drop Awakening because he's super inconsistent. And unless he can turn that consistency factor around, then I don't have faith in him as a teammate if I'm on this squad to show up in those big moments.
I have a theory, Pat, because I think Joe is one of the easily most consistent slayers. I have a theory. I feel like Joe might be changing his ways. Maybe Lamar's trying to teach him certain things or show him certain fundamentals that Joe maybe is not accustomed to doing. I'm just spitballing. I don't know.
So you're saying like if Lamar wasn't on the team, then Joe would be playing how he used to play?
I just look at this roster. It's like Linz has won challengers.
Really good.
Well, Joe and Reese haven't won on LAN, and Lamar has won on LAN. So I know that Lamar is naturally, like, this is how, like, I'm not roasting these players. This is just naturally how it goes. When you're the guy who's won on LAN, everyone on the team always will look at you to make sure like everyone's on the same page. So they're always going to look at Lamar, and Lamar's not going to hold back. I feel like Lamar's the type of guy that keep it a buck with his teammates. So I'm just thinking out loud because I've never seen Joe be inconsistent as a slayer in my life. So it only makes sense to me. Like I know Brandon Octane was talking about Dashy last year making changes to his gameplay because getting away from just being a slayer all the time and maybe playing a little bit more like block a spawn, rotate here, sit on this hill here. Maybe Joe's going through that process right now, Pat. Maybe that's what's going on behind closed doors. I've never seen Joe be an inconsistent slayer. So that's my only justification I have.
Yeah, and I think that Joe as well, if you look at the composition of this team, going into this year, you expected Lamar to be that sort of reliable AR that you know he's going to make the right plays in the right moments, etc. You have Joe who's there to pick up the kills. And on the SMG end as well, same thing. You have Linz who's like that new X-Factor type young player who's going to make big plays. And then on top of that, you have Vivid who's the more experienced guy and you expect him to make the more experienced plays. But again, I think both of Vivid and Awakening at different moments have not done what's required of them in their specific roles on the team, and that is Awakening to be the main Slayer and Vivid to be this like the support type SMG to Lins. Because I think we just spoke about at the start of this, Vivid even made some big mistakes towards the end of those games, and their loss against OpTic in particular. So
that's also kind of what I fear about this squad in general is like they don't, and yeah, it's obviously mainly Vivid and Awakening. I know everyone can't be, but they don't feel like they have that winning mentality to me. Does that make sense? And it's like for maybe one guy on the squad that's okay if he's super talented and he's like getting there, but maybe both of them. Because Mark, to your point, like you can't have two guys that are making like, you know, have two fundamental errors, right? Vivid being the fact that he's making like game losing plays, and Awakening being on the side where he's just being super inconsistent. Because if you get those in different maps, then you're almost looking at like 2 map losses in a series, right? If like Vivid makes a bad play and Awakening has an inconsistent map, like you could lose 2 maps. So for me, again, I think they're middle of the pack. I think it's safe to put them there. It's just if I'm the coach or manager of the ROKKR, like I'm not happy with this team. Even though they got top 4 at Boston, I would still be looking to upgrade this roster because I think they have enough talent to, you know, knock on that door of top 4.
Would it be a sub or an AR? Because it sounds like you're kind of on the fence, Pat.
I think it would depend on who you get, right? Like, I would take the best option that I could get. But I would say I have more faith in Vivid than I do Awakening currently, and I think that kind of goes to the dynamic that you're talking about with Lamar and Awakening. Because I think when they made this roster, Awakening was supposed to be that star AR player, and I just don't think he has been. So, yeah, I would probably go with the AR.
Next up is Seattle Surge, guys. I don't know how much you guys want to go in depth with this roster, but I'm gonna let you guys start. Where should we rank Seattle Surge?
Blow it up. Get them in there.
We should make a tier below it up. They should be in a tier of dismantle the franchise. The decisions that this franchise has made around this Call of Duty team has been absolutely abysmal. That goes to the squad they formed in the beginning of the year, right? That I thought was horrible, like allowing this Alec, Hook, Illy trio to team up and then grab aBeZy, who was the best main AR in Challengers, and put him on a sub role so then Alec could play the main AR, and then playing a whole event, or a whole qualifier and an event, realizing Illy was by far and away the best player, drop him, but still not put aBeZy on the main AR when he was like outperforming Alec even as a sub when it's not even his role. I just don't understand the thought process. I don't understand why Illy got dropped. I thought he was better than everybody on that roster. I thought aBeZy's made like great strides to solidify his roster spot. For
that
me,
kid's insane, Pat. That kid is insane.
Yeah, for me,
he's not
honestly,
being shown in the right way right now.
I would honestly put aBeZy on main. I would bring Illy back, and then I'd pick up 2 subs. That's what I'm doing to the Seattle Surge roster. I don't understand the logic that has gone into any of their decisions so far. I think they are by far and away the worst CDL team right now. They almost get 100-point clubbed every single map they play in hardpoint, and if they don't, it's because they get like garbage time, and then maybe like the team rotates at the end of the game and just lets them have the last 20. They are terrible. They're good at nothing. And when you really look at it, when you go back, what maps has this team won where it wasn't one person taking over? Think about it. In the beginning of the game and at the event, it was like Illy had takeover maps. And then even today, the map they won, it was like Alec broke a record in like the most S&D kills so they could win. This team cannot. They never have 4 guys playing average. They are awful. They are awful.
If I was an active player and I heard Pat saying they're good at nothing, I would get so tight.
They're awful, man. They are. And I think, Hook is a good Call of Duty player, but again, it goes back to what we were talking about with some of the subs. His play style doesn't work in this style of game. I think that's why it makes inconsistent results. And I think Alec has been really bad. Alec was bad on LAG. Alec has been bad on this game. Like, he's in a position where if he doesn't drastically step up, his performance as a player, and he's had peaks where Alec has been like the best man AR in Call of Duty, but he's, in my opinion, fallen off a massive cliff, and I think he needs to step it up. But again, my point, they're below blow it up. This they I don't even agree with the roster move they made. Like, aBeZy can't fix this team's problems, and he's coming into a nightmare scenario, and he's performing bad as well. So.
Have they said why Ender? Have they said anything about it or no?
There wasn't even mention. They didn't even mention they like dropped Ender. There wasn't even like a tweet mentioning he got dropped.
That's interesting.
It was just an announcement with aBeZy. Like, that was it.
Hi, aBeZy. How you doing, mate? That's it.
Basically.
Welcome.
Yeah, 100%. I don't understand the whole thing.
As a new tier.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. I think without actually knowing, like, we're speculating each week, like, what potential team, without actually knowing the reasoning or what happened behind the scenes. It's hard to obviously say, but I think Illy should be in the team from what we had seen at the start of the season. And, you know, hopefully it's not an issue where he can't return to this roster, but you'd like to hope that he can, because I think that this team is at the point now where they need to make drastic changes. And I think that you guys are in agreement here. I think aBeZy, it doesn't really make sense why he was brought in, and it's almost like they're trying to prove that he's such a good player that he can play as an SMG.
Yeah, that's insane.
It doesn't really make sense. Why are you not playing the player in his strongest role? And I've seen this happen, like, maybe not to this extent, but I've seen this happen multiple times with like flex type players where they're like playing as an SMG when it's not their strongest role. You know, like, say even with like Scrap, for example, he is typically a flex on their team per se, but he is definitely stronger as an AR. And I think that that's one of the things that they're not playing to aBeZy's like actual strengths is the biggest issue I have.
You spent it spot on. It's as if you bring Scrap in and you go, hey, you're disgusting. You drop 1.3s with an AR, that's put you on the sub, Scrap. You'll be good.
You're just talented.
You'll be good. You're still really good, but you're not going to give us what we wanted, but let's do that instead.
Listen, I will say I'm really glad that PrizePicks is so simple to play. You know, I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds, and I am going with the Seattle Surge players less every time. So
I like that, Pat.
Yeah.
Good stuff out of you. Next up we have, is it OpTic Gaming we have next? I believe it is.
These guys are so interesting to me, man. These guys are interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they're like not how you'd expect them, right? Because they've came away with two like resilient victories on the weekend where they've came back down 0-2, then they were down 1-0 in their second series. But we didn't expect that of this team from the get-go. We expect them to come in and be destroying teams. And right now they're just grinding out victories, which is still a good thing, but is it like the sign of them being a weak team, or is it the sign of them being a great team? I'm not entirely sure.
Strong team. Look, I said it last year on the reverse sweep. Dashy did not like my comments where I said Brandon and Pred cannot team together. And maybe that's still true. Maybe I'm still going to stick with what I said in the past, but I wouldn't expect to see that this 4-man team is grinding out games and winning and icing up the way that they are. It's almost as if it's like a dark horse team in a way. And it makes me kind of excited for them, because the one thing about OpTic that I never liked personally as a player, as a spectator, as a fan of the esport, is how I've always felt like they just always steal other people's success, Pat. And I know you know what I'm talking about right now. Oh, you guys are great. You guys figured it out. Well, we're OpTic. Come over here. We're better. And they always just get the best superstars every single year. And it's almost like you want to see them fall flat on their face because of it. Because you always got to get the best, the best, the best. This team has all that on paper, and it's not going the way I would have expected it to go. It's going in the complete opposite way. It's going in a way of like, we believe in ourselves. Let's make sure that let's find a way of like exploiting something and just win when it matters most. That's a trait that I've always loved to see in teams. I didn't expect it with this roster, but that's why I say they're interesting. Definitely in my top 4. I'd put them behind FaZe and ahead of New York, but that's just my personal opinion.
I would have them in the top 4 as well, but I would actually have them behind New York. I think New York, like, if we can talk about the major in Boston all we want, right? But so far, New York, coming back, if you look at pre-Boston wins and you look at post-Boston, like, New York has been rock solid. They got the 3rd best record in the CDL right now, the 3rd best map win percentage. And I think they're on a path where they look really good. And they also just beat FaZe. I don't think OpTic will beat FaZe. I'm not sure if they match up in the next few weeks, but for me, it's weird because, OpTic 3-0'd the Thieves, right? And like, we'll get to the Thieves, but they weren't, they're not anything special, even with their roster change. And then it looked like they were going to get 3-0'd by the ROKKR. And then the absolute they won a 3v14, right? Let's be honest. They should have lost 3-0 to the ROKKR. They didn't. They clutched up. They push it the distance. They win. This team is just massively inconsistent for me. We see it with, again, I've talked about it with aBeZy and Hydra and some of these other players, like the sub role. I think is hurting this roster in particular. Shotzzy has not been consistent. I think he's been focused on like making winning plays, but when you look at other teams, like the ones who are having success, like their subs aren't struggling. They figured out how to play. And then again, we've talked about it with Dashy. Like it was rumored that he was taking a more backseat approach to this team, like trying to be the guy who's making the winning plays, getting in the hill. And I don't think that's going to help this squad win games. Early on, they were really good at hardpoint and really bad at S&D. Now they're not so, it's not like they're dominant at hardpoint how they once were, and their S&D is a little shaky as well. So I definitely think this team has regressed if we talk about like stage 1 to stage 2. I don't think that, to me, their floor is probably top 4, but I don't think they're in contention to win the major. So for me, I'm going to put them at the bottom of top 4. And Mark, I'll let you do the tiebreaker between me and Doug.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with them being in the bottom of the top 4. I think that although it is a great trait of them, the resilience that they've shown over the last couple of weeks, and it is sometimes the sign of, a championship team, we need to see them consistently grinding out more results over a longer period of time before I start like putting them in the conversation for winning. So I'd think that, whereas I'd consider New York and FaZe teams that could potentially win. So for me, I put them in the bottom of top 4. Personally,
that's fair. That's fair.
And I guess to say too, like this team, I don't think can be worse than top 4, right? Like when we really look at this roster, even on their worst day, like I think it's possible they could get upset. But if we average it out, like I don't think this team is ever going to fall out of top 4. And that's purely, Doug, back to your convo, like the amount of talent they just added to this team. They literally got 2 superstars to this squad. So yeah, I think they're, they can definitely make waves in going forward, but I don't think they can fall out of the top 4.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement there then. Vegas Legion next. So, I mean, they're just such a weird team, to be honest. They're a squad that have obviously came off a recent victory.
Two recent victories. For the first time ever. Yeah. They started a qualifier 2-0.
Then they lose to Ultra, right? So it's one of those ones where they're kind of in a weird spot. I think that they're going to consistently struggle to, beat those top tier teams. Are they going to be able to cause upsets for the kind of on alert middle of the pack teams? Yes, but I'd still probably stick them in the on alert category personally for me.
I love this team, Mark. I really like this Vegas roster because you got a lot of interesting playing styles. You got Dylan Attach, who I love on the main. I think Dylan Attach is he's essential to this team in my opinion. He's the oldest player, the most experienced, winning, accomplished, world champion, etc. He's putting up good numbers too. He's frying, right? But he knows how to get it done. And then you got Evan Purge, who's like the complete opposite. He's not consistent right now. He's probably one of the more, if not the most inconsistent player we've seen in the league. But when he shows good strides, they're really good. And you could see the confidence flowing with him. And then the 2 guys in the middle, Nero and Gio, have insane gunny. Like they both, not the smartest players, but some of the best gunny. So like when you got 2 guys that are thinking smart, like Attach and Purge, and you got 2 guys that are thinking straight gunny, I like that combination a lot. And I can't put them anywhere other than middle of the pack because could they be on alert? Could they make more roster changes? Yeah. But Evan on the sub seems to be working for them. And I know, Pat, you're probably going to want to get him dropped and figure out someone else that takes his spot. But I think that since he's been on the sub, he's made a lot of impactful plays. And I feel like it's been helping the team work out. And more importantly, I just look at how the players respond to each other, and it just seems like they're buying in. And privately, whenever I talked to them, it always seemed like they were buying in. So I like the idea of how they buy into each other. And for that, based off the results, I want to put them in the middle of the pack.
All right, I guess I'll start with this. I like the Gio pickup. I think that was a solid pickup. I think Gio's proved himself. He's had some great series. He also played the best against the Ultra, which is a good sign, right? When you're picking up a rookie from Challengers and he's playing the number 1 pro team in the world and he's playing the best on the team, that's a really good sign. And I've liked Attach and Nero all year long. I think Attach and Nero have been pretty consistent and a rock solid piece for this Vegas squad since they formed. The problem I have with this team is Purge. I think Purge is a liability. I think he's obviously done a little bit better since the Geo pickup and the role change, but I also heard he's their in-game leader, which is a little curious to me. And I think this squad could land themselves in the middle of the pack because I do think they're better than the Gorillas and the Ravens. But again, Doug, my problem is I just feel like this team could make a simple roster change, get someone who is playing much more consistent. I still don't understand why Standy got dropped. I didn't think Standy was this team's worst player by any margin. The rumor was that it was out of game stuff or just mentality stuff. But again, Doug, you know me, like I don't take that. This guy is really wanting to win. Like maybe he's a little toxic. I view that as passion, right?
Agreed.
I can work.
Yes.
I can work with passion.
Yes.
I can't work with someone throwing up a 0.7 regularly.
Yes.
So for me, I want to put this team in the middle of the pack, but I really do think they're on that like borderline on alert thing because, again, I feel like they're just capped, and I think making a roster change could really spice things up in this league. I don't have anything against Purge. I think he's a solid all around Call of Duty player. But again, when we're talking about the pro best 12 teams in the world, if you can upgrade, I think you absolutely do because the talent is just it's so stacked in this league. Like they're not giving you anything. So for me, I'm upgrading. I'm dropping Purge, and I'm making things interesting because I really do think this squad could improve from that move. But I'll go with middle of the pack. I think they're at the end of the middle of the pack. But I don't think they're necessarily on alert because I do think they're on a positive upward momentum from this change. I just think they could be better, and I think Purge will have a series where he bites them in the butt if they don't.
Sounds good. We'll lock them into middle of the pack then. And then moving on to LA Thieves. For me personally, they have just made some roster changes. They haven't looked great. They did just beat Miami, which is, again, not a great team. But I still want to see more from this team before I make a judgment on them personally. So for that reason and that reason alone, I'd probably slam them in on alert. But I think they could be in blow up. But again, it's so early. You can't make two roster changes then within 2 weeks of the team just blow it all up. You need to actually play out a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
To be fair, Mark, I don't think the roster change they made was the right ones.
Yeah, I mean, using that logic, you could definitely whack them in there. But for me, I've got faith in them a little bit. I think it's just biased because I was coaching Nasty, but you know what? Let's go.
No, I think you're right. I think on alert makes sense. There's really not much to say. They got smoked by OpTic and then they scraped by with a round 11 win against Heretics. So I think they are the bottom of on alert. I don't know what this roster change really did for this squad. Dan Ghosty is still their best player. It's a weird situation for me. I don't know. For me, it's just on alert. They're in the bottom of on alert.
Yeah. What'd you think?
I have nothing to add to this. I agree with both of everything that you guys said. There's nothing I could really say. I mean,
this team's just a disappointment to me. They could have made so much better changes in roster mania. They squad wiped, right? Like they had a fresh slate to pick up anyone they wanted, and then they went with this roster and they had to blow it up, and they made two changes, and it's like questionable. And I just don't think they got better, so they're still in the same spot. It's just tough, I think.
The next one, this one's weird for me, guys. This is the Boston Breach.
Are they in the tier list or are they in the background on your wall back there, Doug? A little,
yeah,
a little bias
Boston
here.
Breach action, little green, got a shirt on and everything. You know what I'm saying?
Where would you put them, Doug? You go first. It's your squad.
Yeah.
Well, dismantled, no. Blow it up, no. Winning the major, no. Top 4, no. On alert, middle of the pack. We got dead last at the major. We had a bad split. We made a roster change. We look better. So either top of on alert
you had a good win. You had a good win today.
Yeah. So I would say
got smoked by New York.
It was bad. So I still think about that. I would put him probably at like the bottom of middle of the pack just because like they do look better with ASIM. And it is early, like how we just said about Thieves. They made their roster change and it's early and it's just too hard to tell. That's how it kind of feels with ASIM as well. Like it's too early to tell. So for me, it's like I'm kind of at the bottom of middle of the pack because they haven't proven anything to me in the past that they deserve to be in the middle of the pack. And I kind of want to put them on alert just because they still have a lot more to prove.
They did beat the Ravens, though. They pretty convincingly. They 3-1 the Ravens. That was in like ASIM's debut, and ASIM fried them.
Right. And again, it's just like, what has it been? 3 matches so far, Pat?
Yeah, so they beat the Ravens. They got smoked by New York, and then they clutched up and beat the ROKKR.
Right. So like, I guess middle of the pack is what truthfully makes sense, if I was going to be honest.
I think middle of the pack makes sense. I think you need to give them the benefit of the doubt for the New York series because someone was doing the dishes throughout the series. So I mean,
yeah, that was crazy.
You got to take that into account for sure. So
and they were up 100 points too.
Yeah. I'm putting them. If someone's doing the dishes behind me while I'm playing, I am losing full.
Wait, wasn't it today in the match that the dishes happened?
No, it was last week.
Yeah, it was their.
Oh, so the tweet just came out. Okay.
Yeah,
it was on Saturday, not last week.
Saturday. Yeah. Their match this weekend, the first one. So I'd agree. Bottom of middle of the pack. I think that is probably where I'd whack them in as well.
It's weird though, because like I think this team has a higher ceiling than Vegas currently, but I don't think they've proven that yet.
I agree with the ceiling as well, Pat.
Yeah. I like the middle of the pack though.
And then the final roster, the Toronto Ultra, Pat's favorite team. You can
the
take
2024 World Champions, Mark. I have them going back to back. I just don't think they've lost a beat. Like they look insane. The one weird thing for me is they don't look that great at Rio, and Rio is now a map. But it's like, I mean, dude, I would have faith that this team could just auto veto Rio and still be the best team at the event. They're still disgusting in hardpoint. They're still disgusting in S&D. And I think, I've talked to Scrap a little. Like, I feel like their confidence is still at an all-time high. They still have the best communication out of any team in the CDL. They just don't have any flaws for me. So I'm going with the Toronto Ultra back-to-back winning the major. What do you think, Doug?
Spot on. I mean, there's not really much weakness in their game. They just play traditional Call of Duty at the highest level with a lot of really talented players. So with how you said, Pat, the delusional confidence and the mindset. So it's kind of like a perfect storm of everything in one. And if they don't win, it's really their fault. That's the way I'm looking at this league and how these teams are set up right now. If they're not going to come out on top, it's their fault. Not because another team outplayed them and was better. It's because they just didn't show up and play their game.
Yeah. I also think they're in a great spot too, because like FaZe has looked a little weaker since the first stage. So it's like, not only has Toronto not lost a step, FaZe is kind of looking a little shaky. OpTic's still looking a little shaky, and then obviously you have New York like coming back, but again, they still got to prove themselves at the event. But it's for me, it's like there's no team that has just stepped up to the bar that they set after the first major. So they if you're a Toronto Ultra fan, you're at all-time highs right now, I think.
Yeah, Toronto right now, I believe, have a chance to recreate history. I think they have a chance to like beat the like series record for them as a franchise very shortly. But they have very sort of tough matches though in their next couple. But I think that's obviously
they play Surge. There's not any trouble with that one.
Okay, my bad. But they do play FaZe, which is definitely a big match. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I think without a doubt, you've got to put Ultra number one. You just got to lock them in there before this even started. I think from top to bottom, the players, the coaching staff, everything, they've not really got a weakness in terms of game mode either. We said that FaZe have started to have some struggles in S&D. Ultra are really quite strong across every single game mode, and I think that's why it's just difficult for anyone to take a series against them. There's no like momentum there. Do you know when you play against those teams who are maybe like weaker in S&D, you win the first map, and then you're like, hey guys, we can win this. We've got S&D next. Against Ultra, there's no momentum there. You win the hard point, and then it's like, oh, we've got to play them with S&D. Oh, they're like 7-1 on this map. Nice, let's go. Let's fucking get into it. Yeah, it's just
nice. We got control. They haven't lost in 2 months. Or like,
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Let's get everything.
Yeah, so it's hard to put Ultra anywhere but first place, and I guess that concludes our tier list there, guys. I'm liking how it's looking. What is your guys' thoughts? Anything you would have changed? Any like last minute disagreements there?
No, not for me, Pat. This is literally like, if I would rank the teams, I would probably put it just like this. If you went
What about the
top to bottom.
order? I agree with the how we have them tiered, but do we think the orders are where we would put them?
Maybe ROKKR would be moved a bit. Maybe not.
I give ROKKR the benefit of the doubt because they push the top teams the distance so much. Like,
yeah, I think that's the same for me. I'd probably give ROKKR the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, are they like one more loss away from dropping to on alert potentially?
Right, like knowing how they just lost makes me not have confidence in how they feel about each other moving forward, which is why I'm kind of hesitant with where they're at.
I would feel the same way about that OpTic reverse sweep. Like that should have been a 3-0 for them easy.
Yeah,
right. And if they 3-0 them, we're sitting like maybe they're top 4, right?
Yeah, we're definitely way higher on them for sure. I think the only thing looking at this is like Boston and Vegas. Like I don't know if I would have those flipped.
Yeah. That's
but
true.
I think it's one of those things where it's like time will tell. I don't think we can go wrong with either. I think it's like a time will tell moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I like our others though.
All right. Well, I think we're all in agreement then. We can just lock that in as our tier list. And that's it for the tier list, guys. We should move on to next week's predictions for the matches because we've obviously referenced a few of them just there. There's some.
We only got 2 for Friday.
We've only got 2 for Friday. Are we just predicting Friday then?
No, let's go with the best ones.
Okay.
So what about the ROKKR versus FaZe on Friday?
Yep.
And then Atlanta versus Ultra on Sunday.
Yep.
And the other ones. Oh, I guess and Breach versus OpTic on that's the following actually. No.
Maybe Breach versus Vegas because that's just one of the 2 teams that we had in the same tier. They're like a little tiebreaker there.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. So Minnesota versus FaZe. I'm looking at a FaZe 3-1. I think that this is going to be one of those series for FaZe where they come back with a vengeance after their loss against New York and they close out 3-1. I think Minnesota are going to potentially win the map to S&D. It could be like a 3-1 or 3-0, but I think I'm going to go 3-1 Atlanta FaZe versus ROKKR.
I'm going to go FaZe 3-0. I think they need a big bounce back. I don't think they're happy about that loss to New York. So, yeah, I'm going to go with a FaZe 3-0 smoke show. And, again, it's going to, the ROKKR's on a downhill right now, right? They've had 3 horrible Game 5 losses. So, it'll be a good series.
FaZe 3-0. I think ROKKR's broken. I think FaZe is going to capitalize, and they're going to put him in the gutter. 3-0 FaZe.
Quick and efficient. I was expecting a bit more Minnesota gas there, but I guess not after the last 2 matches. Moving on to the next match. So it was Vegas versus Boston. So it's the first match on Saturday.
It's battle of the middle of the pack.
Battle of the middle of the pack. I don't really know here. From what I've seen today, I feel like Boston definitely have a bit more when it comes down to that the ceiling that they can get to. So for that reason, I think I'm kind of sliding with Boston, but I'm gonna go 3-2 Boston. It's gonna be a narrow victory, Game 5.
I'm keeping my predictions as is. I was casting our second team, our challenge team, Boston Academy, and every time I watched the other team, Boston would win. So I'm just gonna say Vegas is gonna win because right now our Academy team's #1 in challengers, and every time I say the other team will win, Boston Academy wins. With Boston Breach, I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I'm just gonna say, you know what? We're losing until I'm proven otherwise. So it's been working. So I'm just going to say Vegas is going to win. Honestly, it really is a series where I don't know who the best team is. But I do like to have faith in Boston Breach in that. But just to keep it going with what I'm doing at the Academy, I'm going to say Vegas will win.
All right. Well, I'm ignoring the Doug Jinx cheese. I'm going to go with Boston because, Vegas has only beat the Heretics and the Gorillas, right? Like those are teams that we know are in the bottom here. And then they played the Ultra pretty close and managed to take a 6-0 S&D. So I still want to see more from them. So I'm going to say Boston because I still think they're the better team currently.
All right, okay. And then moving on to the final match of the weekend, we've got FaZe. Well, not the final match of the weekend. It's actually the second last, but the final match that we're going to discuss anyway, FaZe versus Ultra. The battle of, who's going to be the favorite, I guess, for Major 2. For me,
a good one.
For me, it's hard to go against Ultra right now. From what they've seen so far, they've really, like we've just said, not really had many weaknesses. So it's hard to go against them, especially since they've got over that FaZe hoodoo of, not being able to beat them for the majority of their franchise history. I think they're full of confidence now in that matchup. So for me, it's going to be a 3-1 Ultra.
I want to call it now. I don't think this FaZe roster, if both these teams keep their exact rosters, I'm just going to call it now. I don't think FaZe will beat Ultra one time this year. I think all throughout this year, Ultra will beat FaZe because of these team dynamics. I just can't. All these players are consistent on all these teams. They're all amazing players. But when I really break down these team dynamics, I can't see Ultra losing to FaZe. And I'd be shocked if they lost to FaZe just because of the way that they play the game. There's always going to be something with the FaZe. There's going to be a small hesitancy or something that's going to happen where Ultra it just feels to me that Ultra just thinks a little bit more ahead than FaZe always does. So I'm always going to take Ultra in this matchup.
For me, it's pretty easy. Ultra are just far and away the better S&D team here. It's kind of the same argument with New York right now. It's like, if FaZe don't improve their S&D, I just don't see a world where they can beat this Ultra squad because, FaZe is not beating Ultra in all respawns consistently. Like, Ultra will take a respawn against you, even worst case scenario. So for me, I have Ultra winning this 3-1. And then, until FaZe improve their S&D, I just don't think they're going to beat this Ultra squad.
Sounds good. All right, guys, that's it for our predictions for next week. Make sure you guys comment below any questions you've got for us, because we're going to actually do a community question section right here. So if any of you guys...
we're not getting enough questions, Mark.
We're not getting enough,
You're giving us more.
Don't worry, I'm going to say it twice before the end of the video here, right? So don't worry about it. But yeah, if you guys have any questions for me, Pat, more than likely Chris, who will probably be back in the next episode, make sure you guys comment below, and we'll try and answer the best possible questions. So the one we've got here today from ROKKR is, question for all of you: what was the best win of your career when all odds were against you? How were you able to overcome the adversity?
That's actually an insane question, though, timing wise, that we have Doug on this episode, because I think Doug, me and you have the same answer for this.
Well, I think my answer is kind of torn. Like, I would say 2011, because realistically, we were not supposed to win. Like, we were definitely not the best team, and that game was so micromanaged because everyone had the same classes. So, like, how does our team win it? But realistically speaking, though, it's probably with you because of the circumstances. That's one of a kind, and it's never been repeated. I don't think it'll ever be repeated again. I mean, that's still in its class of its own, in my opinion.
I'm guessing you're talking about the hand injury match, right?
Yeah, well, outside of the injury, like the FaZe, I had just joined FaZe with Doug, aBeZy. We were originally with Nesla, and we picked up Slasher, and then OpTic had formed this God squad at the time, and just everything had basically went wrong at the event. We started off so hot, we were godlike, and then obviously I had that injury happen on Sunday. We looked terrible Sunday morning. And yeah, it was kind of one of those things to answer your question, like, how were you able to overcome the adversity? I mean, that was some of the probably most adversity that I've faced at an event. And I know, Doug, like, after that first series, you thought we were absolutely chalked.
Yeah, we were done.
Yeah. And then we managed to grind out all Sunday, come back from losers, win 2 best of 5s from losers, which is hard to do in itself. And the way that we did it, that whole event, Lizard Squad hitting the event offline, we had to wait, there were delays. This was back when, like, all the FaZe were there, like all the owners, and it was just a sick event. So for me, it's by far and away that one.
I think that event changed Call of Duty history, Pat. I think that changed a lot of things in Call of Duty history. That outcome.
That
sent me to retirement. I retired because of it, because you got me dropped. So
no,
I see it from that, man.
No, we played an event after.
Yeah, but you come on, bro. You still to this day haven't admit you threw that event. Like, I know you threw the event.
We felt it when I played with you. What are you talking about?
I was dropping 2.0s and you were just not trying. I'm like, bro, you're giving me free 2.0s. Like, I don't get 2.0s on the map. Like, what are we doing?
We won the event. What are you talking about?
No. The next one. The next event.
Oh, dude, you're talking about... You're changing... That's not the question.
You were thinking about champs, and you were thinking about dropping us so that you could have your team for champs. You didn't care about Orlando.
Dude, I thought we regressed.
You wanted to pack a punch.
We regressed.
So you got Chris, the co-host on the show. You got Chris. Isn't it funny how it all comes full circle?
We wanted to attach.
Yeah, for me, I don't really have as cool a story,
Mark,
to be
what's
honest.
yours?
I don't have a cool story like that, man. I'm not going to lie to you.
What about in Europe?
Mark,
Do you have any big
hold on.
wins, Mark? In
No,
Europe?
Mark, I know yours.
What's mine?
You come in. Someone on your team is sick. You
Oh,
sub in,
yes!
and you get
Yes!
you get the streak.
Maybe.
map was that?
Do we count
What
that?
map?
I
You
don't
didn't
know.
even play that year, and you still won the map on the main stage. I'm counting
Yeah, I
that.
mean,
crazy.
I'm counting
that was cool. That was cool. I think that if I'm being real though, I'm probably looking at more of a coaching one, and it was probably our Toronto team getting like 4-0 comebacked in the game 5, or in the game 5 in the grand finals of Major 5 against Minnesota, and then the event after coming back and being resilient enough to like fight our way back to COD Champs finals, although we didn't win it, so it's not cool of a story. But like, I still think it was cool. I still think it was a good sign of the team's resilience to be able to get super ultra mega reverse swept to then come in and still beat the team that did that to you at champs and then progress to champs finals.
Yeah, I don't think that'll ever happen again. That comeback.
And
So,
they played well
that
in the
was
finals
mega
too. It's not like they
adversity.
didn't show up in the champs finals. They played well in that too. Like
Yeah.
they were definitely good enough to win it.
For me, that would probably be the one I'd probably reference, but there's probably a better one out there, but not as cool as your guys, so it's a bit boring to talk about. But yeah, that was it for the question, guys. Make sure you guys comment below the next question you guys want to have on the show. Make it a good one as well, because there's some absolutely terrible questions in there.
Yeah, if we get more, we can answer more.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of terrible ones. Think about it before you press that send button on the comment, all right? And like I said, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we will catch you guys later. But before that, go to prizepicks.com/reverse sweep and use code reverse sweep for a first deposit match of up to $100. We'll see y'all later.
Peace.
Peace.
Thank you, Doug.
My pleasure, guys.